supporting this venture. I was not here when Jason Margaret, when he gave a talk at the Service, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
In this very place a couple of weeks ago. So I heard that was very good, and I'm sure that today will be very, very interesting indeed. I'd like to introduce you, Jason, who has, I've been told by him, spoken to an audience of no less than 700 people before now, so he's not nervous. But we're very pleased to welcome you, and we're very interested in what you have to say.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you, Dave.
Yeah, lovely. My name is Jason. I'm just going to tell you a bit about my life story. I lived on the streets for 28 years, and that's from the age of 12 to my late 30s. Being on the streets is very hard and very tough. Unless you've been there and done it, you know, it's very difficult for anybody else to understand exactly where I'm coming from. I'm going to tell you a bit about living on the streets and tell you a bit about my own recovery. I spent a lot of time living out on the streets, as you know, and it was very tough. And I mean very tough because for the simple reasons that we were being bullied, we were being kicked, we'd been set on fire. I've been set on fire twice by people just generally passing by, thinking that we're nothing. But we are something. We are individuals. And the reason why I say that is because there is so many people around, even here in central Oxford, you know, that will just walk past us thinking, oh my God, what's he doing there? And it's very hard to understand that even when you haven't got an address, it's very difficult to even access services. Being on the streets was very tough for me because I thought I should have been at home with my family. And not being at home with my family, I lost out on a lot. Being homeless, thought, all right, yeah, it's an adventure. And it really was an adventure. I did travel when I was able to claim benefits and get some money in my pocket. So that was another reason why I did enjoy being on the streets. It was a choice that I actually chose. Yes, it was. A lot of people do choose to live on the streets, and there is a lot of people that don't want to help. There's a lot of people out there that don't really understand what it's like to actually live on the streets. Living on the streets, for me, was very hard because even at such a young age, it was very daunting because everybody else seemed bigger than me, and I didn't have no help, no support or anything. It was challenging. I got into some real bad habits. I got into drugs, I got into drink, and that pretty much took over my life. You look at me now and you think, he doesn't look like he's taking drugs, it doesn't look like he's ever drank, but I did, and I did go excessively. I got told at the age of 21 that I wouldn't see 25 because for the simple reason I was taking that much drink, taking that much drugs, that it was getting really hard for me. And I thought, well, is this a way that I really want to spend the rest of my life? No, it's not. It is very hard work when you're trying to explain to people that don't really understand where you're coming from, don't understand the troubles and the traumatic times that you've had before. When I came to Oxford 15 years ago, I wouldn't trust no one. I thought, you know, you have all these volunteers that were working at the gatehouse, and they were stood there It says, you know, how are you? And you think, I feel like crap today. I really do. I feel really tired. I've had enough. No one's understanding my problem. They said, oh, I understand. And I'm thinking, no, you don't. You really do not know what it's like to actually live on the street. You don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. And for me, that was the most difficult day that I started off with, thinking, oh my days, people just want to talk, but I want to really express myself. I want to be able to say to people, I have a problem, and I want help. It wasn't until I went away and came back. I've been back in Oxford now nearly 10 years now, this time round. And for me, things have just started to go up and up. When I came to Oxford this time round, I got told, because I got a disability called cervical dystonia. Cervical dystonia is a muscle movement disorder. For me, that got me down because my chin used to sit on the back of my shoulder. So I was only able to do anything backwards. Or I couldn't see frontwards because my chin was locked there. So I had to do everything backwards or sideways. And that's a challenge and a half. They told me that it's on the similar basis of Parkinson's, where the whole of your body just goes into tremors. You have got no control over it. It's very difficult to try and do anything, cook, eat, drink, because I would just launch it. I had no control. I was starting to get frustrated. I'm thinking, let's just end it, you know, deal with it. And I was getting worse and worse by the day. I was having so much medication, you know, I was sleeping a lot, because the medication they was giving me was sending me off to sleep, so I really wasn't getting anything done. I wasn't going to all the support groups that I needed. I wasn't able to go to my meetings because I was asleep. I was asleep for so long. It was very difficult then. And I'm thinking, well, how am I supposed to get the help that I need to get off the streets, to get to where I am now? From that moment on, I got told there was a chance of having an operation done. But I had to raise £40,000. How on earth do you expect someone with my disability, living on the streets, not really get much benefits, because you don't get much benefits when you live on the streets? Or, you know, it's very difficult to live. From then, I thought, there's got to be another route round it. There has to be. There's no way am I going to be able to get a chance. Living on the streets, no roof, no contact, no nothing, to get over £40,000. From that second on, I thought, all right, I'll just leave it for now, and I'll leave it to the NHS to see what they come back with. They came up with a pilot, and that pilot was that I could have a pacemaker attached to me, which is just sitting underneath my chest. They put electrodes to the brain that takes over all my spasms, but there's nothing that they can do about my neck. So I got used to that. I thought, well, you know, at least I got the tremors under control. I'm able to hold things, I'm able to cook, which was a great start for me, because I thought, I'm not ever going to be able to do anything. They said if I left it and I didn't have the operation done, within 6 years, which is now past, I would have to have carers in to do everything for me. I thought, there's no way am I having that. Having some strangers coming in and doing everything for you. I couldn't cope with that. I couldn't deal with that. And I wouldn't deal with it. So after they put the machine in, they call it deep brain stimulation, because now where your brain would normally tell you to put one foot in front of the other, my foot would go back. So it steps me back, and it does set me back. And ever since I've had this done now, I have 80% of my body back. And I'm really grateful that it's been done, and I've actually had it done. after that, I started wanting to volunteer at the gatehouse. They said, well, you can't really. And I thought, well, I want to be able to give something back that was given to me. And of course, after all that time, I sat there and I thought, I've got to be able to do something. I want to be able to give something back. I want to be able to help others and have an understanding of what it's like to actually live on the streets. To have an understanding of knowing that you are able to help someone else that's in the same predicament. I then sat and I pondered. And then Andrew Smith, which used to be our road project director at the gatehouse, says, we need to move. And I said, what have we got to move for? We have perfect premises. It was down in the dungeons of St. Michael's. Some of you might remember it. And it was a perfect place. It used to get really busy because we were right in the centre of town. From that moment on, they said they had to move out and we had to find somewhere else. Lucky enough, St. Giles said, you know, why don't you come back up where it originally started? Because this is where it originally started, here. When the gatehouse started off 20 odd years ago. So we had to raise some money, and I was a big part of that. We had to raise 175,000 for the gatehouse, for the revamping and possibly like 5 years rent back then. I was a big part of that. They said, oh, you can start volunteering. I had to stay away for a month because it's just having that reconnection, getting back into working. All right, yeah, I was volunteering, but it was distancing yourself from being a guest to being a volunteer. I got told by Andrew Smith and a new project director, which is Katrina Horn. They said, oh, it's a bit bossy. I'm not bossy. I've never been bossy. But I just love it. You know, and given the opportunity to actually do something, like I'm doing today, doing talks. I'm also a senior project worker now, so I'm one of the paid workers. And to be a big part of a big team, where we're all working, and we are a team. You know, and it's just such a great atmosphere, and it's a great place to be, guest and volunteer-wise. Now, a lot of you might not know what the Gatehouse does, or how we run. I mean, we get a very small budget from the Oxford City Council, which is $5,000 a year. And then we've got to pay our rent, which is $3,000 a year. And then we've got to get other bits on top of that. So it doesn't leave us very much, you know, by the end of the year. This is one of the reasons why I come out and do talks, because it's one of my extensive jobs that I do. I'm in charge of a lot of the fundraising. And it's great to be able to come out and meet people like yourselves that get an understanding of what it's like to actually live on the streets, to actually understand and know what it's like, and to be able to help such a great charity that it is. I thoroughly do enjoy it, and I'm now a couple of steps away from being at the top. I'm trying to sack my project director, but she's not having none of it. There's no one to complain to, because nobody ever listens to me anyway, generally. But I really do enjoy it. It's something that I'm now able to give something back. And to actually able to see things from a different side, to see things from the other side, to what it's like. I couldn't go back on the streets, not now. I don't think I'll survive. I don't think I would be able to go back out and live on the streets. Not even now, I've been indoors now 5 years. I still find it strange. I've got my foot in the door. I'm checking my bag and my pockets. I've got my keys, I've got my phones. You know, you didn't have any of that when you lived on the streets. Well, you make sure that you had your door shut, you know, wherever you were sleeping. and you had your sleeping bag and your blanket safe. So obviously you didn't want to carry it around all day, you just didn't know what time you were going to go to bed. So I used to stash it and hide it away. From that moment on, I now see it thinking that was an experience. It was an experience that I would never ever forget. And to be able to share that with you is a great privilege for me. Thank you. Anybody got any questions?
Jason, interesting one my friend over there said about young people. I wonder what it is that makes young people go out on the streets, whether they have allowed their parents. We all know in your teens you start to get revolting, if you see what I mean. And also, we're very concerned these days with increasing problems with mental health with young children, young teenagers particularly. This feeling of insecurity and depression, which make up for bullying at school or worry about the pressure exams or whatever. I don't know quite what it is that makes them leave home, go missing, God forbid, and end up on the streets. And is there a stage at which one can tell them back? I'm interested to know how many of your guests in the gatehouse are actually young teenagers. When I see you all gathered together in the garden, you seem to be men and women of the 20s, 30s, perhaps older. Do you get many very young people coming who are living on the streets?
To answer that, I mean, our policies are that we only have people that are over 25 coming through premises. Yes, we can serve people that are under 25. It's just been a rule that has been there since day one, really, and that's the way they like it. A lot of our guests have said, you know, people that are under 25, you know, they can be a lot louder than what people are over 25. So that's one of the reasons why we don't allow anyone under the age of 25 in and over the threshold, but we can still serve them food and everything that they may need. Answering your other question about people with mental health issues, that's very difficult because there is so many different stages of people that have mental health issues. Now, there is a lot of help out there, but there is less targets for people that have mental health issues alongside with alcohol and drugs. Now that is something that could well have triggered them off in their younger years, you know, especially young, and they're a bit, you know, in denial. And also, a lot of the youngsters just choose that way. They do choose it. There's a lot of young ones out there today that have drug and alcohol issues, but they can't really get the help because there is no help out there for them. They have to deal with their issues one at a time. And it's very difficult to try and get one issue sorted and then come back and drag it all through again and deal with the other issues.
Jason, what do you think is the most helpful thing we can do as members of the public? Give money to people we see on the streets, give money to charities and other organisations like the Gatehouse, give a meal to someone on the streets, volunteer. What are the most useful things we can do in your view? And what are the counterproductive things, if any?
Very good question. There is quite a few things that you can do. You can support your local charity. You know, if you want to support the Gatehouse, we have no problem if you want to support the Gatehouse. There's many ways that you can actually do that by making homemade cakes, because that's one thing. You know, if you are a good cake maker, let's have your cakes in. I want to try them before they give them out to the guests. Because that is one thing that they really do miss. you know, when you are actually living out on the streets, it's a bit of homemade cake, like the same way as your mum used to make it, or your nana used to make it. You know, there is that. Giving money, I would never really I would strongly never give them money, because you could be potentially killing that person. Why? Because you don't know their background, you don't know what their history is, you don't know if they have got a drink or drug problem. You might be able to see that in their expression on their faces, but you know, you just don't know what's happening in their own life. I always strongly suggest, you know, buy them a sandwich, you know, or a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. But I wouldn't strongly, you know, give them any money at all. But if you really want to support, you know, a homeless charity, then please do, either in donation or, you know, coming to volunteer for us, you know, for a couple of hours, you know, either on a weekly basis, fortnightly basis. It's down to you. Thank you.
A long time ago, I was sentenced to 2 years in a place called Canton, laughingly called the Theological College. And part of our course was to be dropped on the edge of the embankment with 50 pence and musical instruments to sleep out for 2 nights, saying what it was like to be homeless. And I said that was fortunate, because no one knew in 2 days' time we were back in our bed. Now, what I think one of the problems must be is a future which is bleak, never ending. How will you keep up your hope?
Very good question. How do I keep up my hope? I wake up, and then that's a positive start for me. If I wake up, I know I've got a great day ahead of me. It makes no difference if I've got the day off. It makes no difference that I might not be working that day. But to be able to wake up and enjoy the day, and to come and do talks like this, and to be able to be a part of a great community that are out there. There's so many ways that people support people like myself. There's people out there that support our charities. There's people out there that really do want to help and reduce the figures. Because I would love to see the numbers come down. I would love to have the Oxford County Council and the Oxford City Council reduce the numbers of people living on the streets. Because not everybody you can help, and there's not a lot of people that want help. But to be able to be a part of it and be sustained, you know, by services around Oxford, you know, that's the best way ever.
When you were on the streets, how did you maintain your hope at that point of your life?
For me, living on the streets, I mean, it was very challenging. You know, where am I going to get my next meal? Where am I going to be able to rest? Where am I going to get my laundry done? Where am I going to get clean clothes from? That was really challenging because it was difficult. I didn't really have much hope. You know, I just lived day by day. And that's how I did it. Once I started getting the help that I needed and the support I needed and the right organisation to go and see, it just flew by. You know, I was one day living on the street, next day I was in a hostel, next time I was in another hostel, the next time I was in my own place. Even now, you know, I still find it daunting. Have I got enough money? Have I got enough money to get me through? Have I paid all my bills? There's one other thing that you don't have when you're living out, is bills to pay. Water rates. And they're shocking, you know, especially here in central Oxford. You know, it's just, I didn't think it could be possible. When I had my first bill, I thought, I'm going to ring them up, see if I can get a discount. Surely there must be a discount. People just moving in, they kind of expect us to pay over £400. You know, there's got to be a way around it. I was very daunted. I thought, should I just put in the bins here? Nobody lives here. They're going to find out I'm going to be living here, aren't they? But then it was a question of, let's just get on with it, deal with it. You know, spread your costs out. You know, make sure that you paid everything that you need to pay. Make sure you got your gas and your electric. Because when I was living on the street, I borrowed somebody else's electric from next door. So I used to wire it all up. But to actually have your own gas and electric and, you know, bits and pieces that you really do need, you know, is an essential. And of course, when you're living on the street, you ain't got any of that. You've either got to layer up and keep warm, or get in somewhere and keep warm. But when you ain't got a place, you know, and it takes ages, you know, to get an assessment, as well as, you know, living here. I mean, I've seen so many people that have had their own places, and they've gone back through the system, right? Because they've got nothing structured. There's no structure. There's no, you know, interests, you know, personal interests, hobbies, you know, and they end up being alone. When you're living on the streets, you've got a massive community, and they do support each other. There is a lot of people out there in Central Oxford that do support each other.
There are definitely more people in the queue now, but can I just ask you, following up from the last two questions?
Yeah.
I realise that there'll be similarities of experience in the homeless fraternity, and yet everybody's is going to be uniquely theirs. I just wonder, when you were at your lowest, perhaps, when you were out there, whether you had a particular moment when you said, I'm going to do something? And, you know, how you maintained that persistence, really, in the face of all that, so it's just tremendous. I just would like to know what it was that really turned you around in the first place, and how you kept going once you started going down that road.
It took me a long while. It really did take me a long while to actually have things constantly running around my head with regard to what am I going to do, where am I going to go, what support is there out there for me, is there anybody going to go out there to understand me. I didn't really have much hope at the beginning. It wasn't until after my diagnosis with my cervical dystonia, I started having a bit of light, thinking, okay, let's go to the library, let's go and read up about it. Let's go and see, you know, what it's all about. You know, if I can't get it in layman's terms, I'm going to have to get somebody else that's got the professional knowledge that can advise me on what to do. It was from that moment, really, that gave me the positive invention, you know, to keep going. And if I shout out, somebody's going to listen to me. Because I always used to be a nice person. I thought, yeah, I can speak, I can do this, I can do that. But when you realise at the end, by the time you finish talking, it's like, do you really understand? Do you really know what it's like? And it was from that moment, really, that I sat there and thinking, should I carry on? Because I was really beginning to lose the will to live. I couldn't face it. I really couldn't. When I started seeing there could be a light, and I'm thinking, all right, yeah, this is a disability. This is a disability that will never ever go away. It's never going to disappear. No matter how much medication or how much this machine takes over, every 3 years I'm going to have to get it replaced. And have it switched off where my tremors are going to come back. And I'm going to have to deal with that again. You know? And I'm coming up to that 3-year mark now. And I'm nervous because I know for a fact I'm going to be switched off for a couple of weeks. I know for a fact that I'm going to have all my tremors back, so I will need help and support. But it still won't be doing it, it will not stop me. now from doing what I am passionate about.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask, to give you a sense of scale of the problem in Oxford, you mentioned something about 300, I can't remember, there's 80 or 308 go through Gateway every week. How many people on average per night in Oxford do you think there are sleeping
I think there is approximately about 50% are actually rough sleepers out of our guests that do come to the gatehouses. Out of those 386 visits a week, we approximately get about 70 to 80 guests in on a nightly basis. Not all of them stay, some of them go, once they've been in and got their sandwiches and their cuppa, they'll go and they'll come back later on in the evening because they've got the opportunity then to get extra sandwiches, an extra bit of cake, an extra cup of tea or coffee to go away with. It is very difficult at the moment with the way the circumstances are because they do want to close more hostels, and that could be happening in about April or just after April this year. The services around Oxford that say that we just do not allow you to come in unless you have a reconnection policy. What I'm saying by a reconnection policy is that you've got to have either able to lived, studied, worked, or have family in and around central Oxford. That's got to have been in the last 6 to 12 months. If you haven't got those, so say for instance you came from London last night and you pitched up in Oxford, you're not going to be able to have those services because one, the street service team have not been out and verified you where you're sleeping as yet, because it normally takes a couple of days for them to actually come out and reach you. And also, not just that, they have to, come and take case notes, to find out where you come from, why have you chosen Oxford, why have you come to Oxford today. A lot of people, yes, are fleeing from domestic violence. Yes, there are people that are fleeing from, poverty, sex trafficking, and places like that. But then you got other people like myself. I fled because I was in, such a bad habit of taking drugs and drink, and it was just ridiculous. I moved away, so I thought, if I moved to Oxford, I'm not going to know anybody. I'm not going to bother going out there and sort of like saying, where can I score tonight? Where am I going to go and get the drugs that I need? And that's one of the reasons why I left Oxford in the first place. But to actually be a part of it now, I think I couldn't do it now. I really couldn't.
We're to come here, so we're interested to hear what you're saying. You said a couple of times that some people seem to want to be on the streets. Do you know the reasons, or do they tell you the reasons? Do we know why some people appear to want to be on the streets?
Very good question. There are so many people out there that choose not to have any help or any support from benefits or anything. They just choose to live that lifestyle. They make their money one way or another. It makes a difference if you're going around getting bits of scrap net or this, that, and other. You get a little bit of money from that, or they're fixing things for the general public. When you have guests coming in like that, it's very hard to actually do anything with them. If they don't want help, you can't force them. Or is the other reason, they might want help, but we might not be able to help them. They have to be another service out there that might be able to help them for whatever reason that they have. We always can advise them, yes, but whether they choose to listen to any of the advice that we might give them, You know, that's the only thing, really. It is very difficult when you want to help somebody and they just don't want the help. You know, especially when they get themselves into such a routine. You know, they have drugs, they have drinks, they have dogs to look after. You know, and they don't always put their pet first. You know, they put themselves first, but that always doesn't work. It is, and it can be very difficult because, you know, you have no help or support, you know, regarding that. And when you don't want the help, you know, you're not going to get the help. But you have got to really want the help to get the help that you need.
So it's really easy to ask you questions, but I'm a teacher, so I'm particularly interested in your experience after the age of 12, whether you received any education. You seem very articulate and well informed about things. Did you receive any education after the age of 12?
I passed my 11 plus, and that was about it back then. You know, and that's all I needed. You know. I did have a dictionary that I used to carry around in my pocket. So if any words or street names or anything like that I wasn't really familiar with, I used to read it up in the dictionary and break it down. And that's how I got my education. I still to this day don't have real education. I don't have no A-levels or, you know, O-levels or anything like that. And this is how I managed to get by. I use a computer now that, you know, I start typing because I'm not all that brilliant. And I get a computer out and it gives me the word that I need. I can start it and I know what it's supposed to look like. But sometimes I get muddled up with certain words. But I've also got the help of the computer that helps me through that.
To what extent can gatehouse help people who have got soaking wet with their clothing and bedding equally wet?
Well, the gatehouse can, you know, help with things like that, and also the community can help with that. You know, if you know for the fact that you've seen someone on a regular basis, you might have, you know, got accustomed to. Yes, you can provide them with a duvet or a sleeping bag if you have any around, or maybe somewhere one of your neighbours might have some spare. And that's one way of getting into it all. The gatehouse, we have a clothing store, and that's 3 nights a week. You know, so that is also a bonus. But obviously, there is a lot of guests that will not come up because they reckon it's too far for them to come. And I don't think it is. I mean, I walk it every day pretty much to get to work. Yeah, the gatehouse can do a lot. They can provide you with warm clothing, you know, because you've got the chance to get it there on 3 nights a week. You know, even if you have a couple of old jumpers, you know, that are still in reasonably good nick, yeah, you can pass them on if they, you know, if they want it. You know, so there is other ways around that you can help the community as well as support a local charity.
Sorry, I'm hogging the question, sorry. I'm just thinking something you just said about some people do go to games, they find it too hard to. Is there any way one could be on some sort of, I mean, I'm fortunate, I still drive, I'm not very sure, but I would be very happy to give lifts to people. But would I have to go on a rotor as a sort of taxi service or what? And the other thing I wanted to ask you, and I'm down to the briefly, so you may have touched on this, I'm always intrigued to see how most people who are homeless have a dog, presumably to keep warm. I wonder how they fund it, you know, the health care for their pets or for that feeding them?
Yeah, well, feeding a dog, you know, can be very easy because there's also something else that you could possibly do. You know, it's like if you know for a fact that you've seen somebody with a dog, you know, you can, you know, by going to a shop and buy them a tin of food or buy them a box of like dry meat, you know, depending on the dog because that's what they might do. Never give them any money, you know, that's the other. Answering your other question, you know, by giving people lifts up, I wouldn't, because of our policies and procedures. You know, you just don't know what a person is really going to be like, and for your own specific safety, because I know you might be still driving at the age of 80, you know, it's something that could really get insurance and your own safety really. You know, but you're always going to advise them to go up to the gatehouse if you want to. If they choose not to because of whatever reason, you know, they might have some friends around that, you know, that might have been a problem, but that's generally it. Rob.
People don't know where it is, but in the States they've got little tiny green houses for people who are homeless. I think that's rather a good idea, provided it doesn't isolate people. And is there any way that that might be mooted here? It's not an end of story, but it's like a step along the way. So, for example, where we've had torrential rain this week and it's been warmer today, it's cold, it's rising wind, how do people on the street deal with that? Because you get pneumonia or whatever.
Well, we do have emergency accommodation for people that are sleeping well. If the temperatures drop below 0 for executive nights, you know, then they open up church halls. The hostels open up a lot of their, you know, spare space that they have, you know, and that might go on for a week. It really does depend on the weather and what, you know, street services and the homeless services, you know, are all about really. That is one of the only ways that you can get in unless you do get verified, and you know that there might be a chance that you might be going and set up where you just sit up the whole night and try and sleep in a chair. And then it also depends on your. You might be a single woman living out, or you might have some mental health issues that are, you know, that really do need some support and help around, so you can't really be on the streets. Or you might have a lot of medication, you know, that you're afraid that might get stolen whilst you're living on the streets, because people will do it. They really will.
Hello, Andrew Glasgow, but before I go, can I personally express my opinion that you are so deserving of admiration, and thank you. Very humbling to hear what you had to say, and I'm glad I'm here.
Well, thank you very much.
Just to give you a little bit of background on what's going on in the City Council, County Council, etc., and numbers on the streets. The most recent count of people who are actually sleeping rough is about in the 60s. The usual figure that we reckon is that when they do a count of the people living on the streets, it's about a third of the real number. So that gives you about the approximate number of people who are sleeping on the streets in and around Oxford City. The number of beds that we have currently for people who are homeless and are in hostels is of the order of 180, or is it nudging towards 200? 80 of those are going to be taken out of service because the County Council is withdrawing funds from homelessness provision. The reason why they can do that is because provision for people who are single homeless is not a statutory duty of care, and therefore they have got limited funds and they're withdrawing it. The City Council is really trying to do as much as it can to alleviate the problem. They have decided, I think yesterday, to put the money from the sale of council houses into provision of housing for homeless people, and they are hoping to get 35 units of housing from that in and around Oxford City. So there's this constant jousting of trying to get people into hostels. The problem that people have is to get out of the hostel accommodation into more permanent accommodation. There is a dearth of housing for that. And that's the bit that actually the county council is withdrawing funds from. So there is a problem. What can you do? There are several things. Jason's talked about funding issues. The funding issue, I can just give you a scale of the magnitude. The gatehouse costs £140,000 to run each year. Last year, we were £20,000 in deficit. So we're trying to make that up. Jason is part of the answer to that, in that we're using his skill in fundraising to try and get extra funds into the gatehouse and close the gap. So that's the way we're trying to maintain the long-term future. But the funding issue is fundamental to the long-term issue. That's for getting housing. Housing is expensive in Oxford. We tried, through the churches, to provide some severe weather emergency provision. Bond Square Baptist Church offered a room for this. They fell into exactly the same trap that we fell into when we tried to do this years ago at St Giles, in that there has to be a safety regime in place, and they've been told that in order to bring their facility up to spec, it would cost them several £1,000s to put in all the fire detection equipment. So there is a problem. We cannot just open this place up to homeless people to sleep overnight, because the people would say, you're not in a fit state to be able to do that, it would be a fire risk, da-di-da-da, you can't do that, insurance won't cover it. Well, there's some of us who say, some people are going to die out there. So there is an issue there. So housing's one, funding's another. There are two other things. One which the Gatehouse and others are trying to address is mentoring. Jason was talking about people who get into accommodation not being able to really work out how to deal with all the bills, to work out with stable living. And what we're trying to do in various ways is to put in place mentors who can work alongside people, helping them to reintegrate with society. So mentor is one thing. And another thing that we're working on is trying to get jobs for people who are currently homeless. Job opportunities are bleak for people who are living on the streets. If you can't give an address, you can't really get into a job. So there are various people, the colleges are now beginning to buy into this, to try to provide the beginnings of work opportunities for people who are living on the streets. So that is one development that happened in 2016, and one of the things that we would love to do here, and I've asked various people to do it, is to provide a cafe which is staffed by homeless people and is run so that they can actually start paying themselves and get a job. And Jason is one of the people who's wanting to try and do that within this church. I hope one day, not in too long a time period, that will happen. So if there are opportunities that we can provide for jobs, getting cheap housing, and mentoring and funding, then we can start to crack this problem. But there is a big problem at the moment in that because of government cuts, the funding issue from central government is being really cut back for homelessness. We are seeing it rise. There's been a 50% rise of rough sleepers on the streets of Oxford in the last 2 years. We've got a problem. We're cutting some of the provision for homelessness. I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see people alienated from society. And that's why I'm involved with homelessness. And thank you, Jason, for all you've done. Because this is the sort of guy that we need. Somebody who understands the problem on the ground floor, who wants to help and work with people who are going through the same issues. Thank you very much.